Can you
Okay.
take away the opening picture, Margie?
What's that?
Can you take away the show picture now?
Yes, I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you. It's a freezing cold night, at least in my den. It's drafty, so it's nice and warm to be together. Last week, we dedicated our shiur to the memory of Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, Alav Shalom. But what I didn't know is that Margie was our hostess in his memory. So I want to mention that again. And to say again that I see a similarity between Rabbi Sachs and Yonatan. They're people who are comfortable in the palace, but are also skeptical about the palace. And just like Yosef wanted his family to live in Goshen and not to live in the heart of Mitzrayim, in spite of his many links there. So I think Rabbi Sachs was, we've learned in recent days, a great founder of Jewish schools and Jewish communities. And even though he was a man of the world, he did want to protect also that closed community of Judaism. So in his memory tonight. So I have to start with a mea culpa, which is that last week, I said very confidently that Yosef's dream of the sheaves is the first time that Jews are seen as farmers. And several of you pointed out to me that before that it says Vayizra Yitzchak, Yitzchak planted. So he was already a farmer. So I'm sorry for that mistake. What I thought we'd do tonight is a speed review, not of what we did last time, but of the conclusion that we came to last time. And then go to tonight's topic, which is Yosef and Yehuda, right? The famous pair. So last time, the talk was entitled From Yosef the Dreamer to Yosef the Tzaddik. And it was really my interpretation of how he interpreted his own dreams. One thing is for sure, from the very first moment, he recognized that each of his dreams represented a different message from the other. Because when he is about to tell his brothers about his second dream, he says, Hine chalamti od chalom acher. I dreamt again another dream. That's an issue for Yosef. Do the two dreams mean the same, as in Paro's case? Or do the two dreams mean differently, like Sarah Mashkim and Sarah Ofim in jail? He determines that his dreams contain two messages, in spite of the many similarities, things bowing to him, but he doesn't uncover the message till much later, till 20 years after dreaming the dream. And he's an important man in Egypt, and his brothers come to buy grain, and he looks at the brothers bowing before him, and he has his aha moment, Vayiskor Yosef et hachalomot asher chalam lahem. And Yosef remembered his dreams that he had dreamt about them, which I see as a very generous reaction. His first reaction wasn't, I remember what they did to me, although he didn't forget. His first reaction is, I remembered the dreams I dreamt about them. And I think it's his first step on the way to seeing the dreams as lahem, for them, for the brothers, not for himself. The self-centered Yosef, whose brothers interpreted the dreams as his ego, and he may have had that. He himself may have at first felt the dreams confirm what Abba's been telling me. I'm the princeling. I'm destined to lead next. I'm destined to be fourth of the Avot, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Yosef. But now that he's a serious poter chalomot, now that he's suffered and changed, he sees them as dreams about them and for them. And the way I see it, he starts the plan going to fulfill the second dream. In the second dream, he's himself not a sheaf of wheat, but he'll take care of that last or next to last when he reveals himself. The sun is there. That means Yaakov is going to come. That will really come last. And the thing he gets cracking on is the stars, 11 stars. So he's got to get Binyamin there. But mostly he has to make them stars, worthy of Hashem's promise to Abraham that his kids would be kechochvei hashamayim. And also, he has to have them. There's some whistling sound. I'm not sure what it is. Is everyone muted except for me? Are you hearing it now, or it's okay? Good. So his plan is really shocking, and it is to hide his identity and use Binyamin as bait to get his brothers in a situation where they have a brother they despise, they're alone, and he is defenseless, and they could easily get rid of him. And we all know they're going to pass the test and he won't, but it is such a risky undertaking. He does hold Shimon back because he's a real violent type. But the anguish that he causes his brothers, particularly Binyamin, and his father and himself is pointed out again and again in the text. Clearly, he believes that something he has to do. Now, one way to interpret it is as revenge, but I think when you see the words I picked out for tonight, I hope I'm going to convince you that he was not taking revenge. And the second thing he decides he has to do to make the dream come true is to sacrifice his position as the leader. True, they're bowing to him. But I think, maybe not in that moment, but over time, he came to realize that his dream was his father's dream, his father's mission to be the father of Kehal Amim. And last time I brought you the 3 or 4 times in the Torah where he's Kahal Amim or Kahal something, Bagoyim. He's not supposed to be the father of 12 sons. He's supposed to be the father of 12 tribes within a single nation, a community of tribes. And that clearly is not going well with the sons of Rachel at the throat of the sons of Leah, or actually the other way around, and his father's tendency to play favorites among wives and sons. Of course, that's exactly how he grew up. And Yaakov's tendency also to assume that it's a zero-sum game. Only one wins. He clearly gave the Ketonet Pasim to the one he thought would be the winner, just as he thought only he could win against Esav. He does recognize with Esav at a certain point that I didn't really need the bracha of material stuff that I, under mother's instruction, swiped from you. But even though he realizes that, he can't get beyond that idea that one is chosen in his family, it seems. Certainly that's what family life revolves around. Who wins and who loses. Which wife gets Yaakov's love, which doesn't. which mother has more children, which has less, which has none, right? Who is the favorite? And Yosef, who benefited the most from the system and suffered the most from the system, senses that it has to be broken. I know that because he can't bear when his father puts his right hand on Ephraim's head. He wants it to go by the system, by the rule. He doesn't want it to be preference or favoritism. And possibly he doesn't even want it to be merit. But as we'll see, it has to go by something. Not everyone can lead. Yosef, the natural leader, his job is the inclusion part. And we'll see that Yehuda, who might not have been included, he becomes the one who understands, even while including, there has to be a selected leader. So that's my theory of why he's Yosef Hatzadik, because by keeping his brother's secret, he does tshuva on having been a tattletale, and he withdraws a bit from the field and allows his brothers some space. So now let's go on to Yosef and Yehuda. And really, that's not the full title of tonight. The full title is Yosef Yehuda, Achai Achinu, Avi Avi, which I'm going to show you now. Here we go. My mouse doesn't want to move. 1 second. There we go. Do you see that? Under Yosef, we have Achai. When Yosef said, Et Achai Anochi Mevakesh, when he, I seek my brothers, which I think is his motto in life. He was considered the guy who only focused on himself. But like many gifted people who are awkward with others and even say things to antagonize others, he craved being one of them. Et achai anochi mevakesh. And Yehuda says achinu, right? When he says we shouldn't kill Yosef, we should only sell him into slavery. He says ki achinu b'sarenu hu. He recognizes Yosef as achinu, our brother. He doesn't say, oh, he's Rachel's son. Oh, he's Yaakov's favorite. He says he's our brother. And both say Avi. Yehuda first in the great reveal, which we'll see today. And again, Yosef right after the great reveal. So really, this is the end of tonight's talk, but we'll take a little peek and then leave it. And so if it's going to be Yosef and Yehuda, let's go, to where we first meet Yehuda, and the setting is Dotan. So you see, the reason Yosef came to Dotan, since his father sent him to Shechem, not to Dotan, is his desire not to just follow his father's instructions, but to accomplish the mission. And as we know, and Ish finds him, and says, what are you looking for? He says, Et achai anochi mevakesh, he comes to Dotan. The brothers see him from afar and plot his murder. And now we come to Reuven, who is on the scene, even though we know he won't be one of the two. And it says about Reuven, Vayishma Reuven, Reuven heard what his brothers were planning, Vayatzilehu miyadam, and he saved them from their hands. Vayomer lo nakenu nafesh, and he says, let's not kill. Vayomer alehem Reuven, and Reuven says to them, Al tishpachu dam, don't spill blood. Now, something obviously happened between the two Vayomers, since it's the same person speaking. obviously Reuben said, including them, lo nakenu nafesh, let us not strike down a life, let us not kill or murder. And they either push him away or don't listen or say, well, you don't have to be part of it, we're doing it. And he tries again. Al tishpachu dam, don't spill blood. Of course, that also means don't murder, but he's taking it a bit literally. Don't actually spill blood. Hashlicho oto el habor hazeh asher bamidbar. Toss him into that pit over there in the wilderness, right? The brothers plan to toss them in alive to hide the evidence. He says, don't spill the blood. Toss him. Wait, did I say the brothers plan to toss him alive? The brothers plan to toss his corpse into the pit, into a pit. He says, toss his living body into this particular pit, v'yad al tishlechuvo, and don't lay a hand on him. Some not laying a hand on him, but don't kill him. And the two reds are the two tributes to Reuven. He saves Yosef's life. Among 10 brothers, he is the only one who steps up. Maybe not all were total participants in the violence. Maybe some were bystanders. But it is kind of shocking that only one steps up. And it shows you the level of hatred. And Reuven is not interested in saving Yosef. He's interested in not murdering, but he never hints that it's our brother, our little brother, Yosef, the dad'll be sad. Reuven stands on principle. It could be Yosef or someone else. We can't murder. And he has a plan to rescue Yosef and bring him back to Yaakov. He doesn't think ahead to what the consequences would be if Yosef, the tattletale, told father what happened. He's trying to be a responsible bechor, but also one feels that he's a man of principle. The others don't seem to respect him. It doesn't say they listen to him, but the fact is he saved the day because they do throw him alive in the pit. And we also know he never gets to pick him out. And then highlighted in yellow comes a moment of such coarseness among our ancestors. It's just hard to imagine. Yosef is wailing in the pit, begging to be taken out. It doesn't say that here, but the brothers say it later on. Reuven is gone. Of course, there are many Rashis on why exactly, but let's say he's preparing the rescue. Vayeshvu lechol lechem. And the brothers sat themselves down to have a picnic. It's a shocking moment. And the Torah does not usually report on meals, but it's because it's a sign of how low. And then Yehuda steps forward. This is the first time that Yehuda ever talks in the Torah. We're so used to the greatness of Yehuda that we sometimes lose track of its starting point. So here they are, Yosef howling in the pit, the brothers eating. And the way I imagine it, Yehuda is watching his brothers. And something is changing. They're looking around. Maybe he senses they're ready to have a way out. They're feeling guilty. They can't bear the cries of the brothers. Maybe the brothers aren't quite so united as they were before. And Yehuda speaks. Vayomer Yehuda el Echav. Yehuda speaks to his brothers. He speaks in a way that is brother to brother. Not like a parent to a child almost, which is how Reuven spoke to them. Don't do that. He speaks to his brothers, and he says, "Ma betza ki naroget achinu." how do we come out ahead if we kill our brother? So he's acknowledging the problem. I'm with you guys. We got to get rid of Yosef. But what do we gain by his death? But he calls him Achinu, our brother. He understands about Achim. He's loyal to the Achim who are ready to kill Yosef. He's also loyal to Yosef. V'chisinu et damo, whether that means we'll be covered with his blood. In other words, we'll be guilty for his death or we'll have to cover up his blood, isn't relevant now. And he says, let's sell him to that caravan that you see over there. V'yadenu al tihivo. And your hands shouldn't be upon him. You shouldn't do violence to him. Well, Reuven's v'yad al tishluchuvo, you shouldn't lay a hand on him, is because he hoped to rescue the live guy. Here, Yadenu al tivo is a little rich for someone you're going to sell into slavery, right? And then he repeats again, Ki achinu b'sareinu. He is our brother, our flesh and blood. And here it says, Vayishma'u echav. His brothers listened. They may have done what Reuven said, but he didn't connect with them. To them, he felt moralizing. Yehuda, and I've often thought that the reason he succeeded at all is that he was Leah's oldest, and probably it's Leah's sons who are in the lead. Yehuda reaches them in a different way, but of course, his timing is 1,000 times better. Reuven steps in when they're in a rage, and it's a good thing he did. He saves Yosef's life. But Yehuda is a natural leader. And as a leader, Yehuda knows that it's no accident that leaders are followed. Leaders are followed because they ask their followers to do things that they are prepared to do. And he waits till he knows his group is ripe to listen to him. And he has the timing of a leader. Reuven is a very virtuous man. And in this story, I would say Reuven is the hero, but he's a hero who's not a leader. In this case, Yehuda is a leader who probably isn't a hero. You could say, well, he kept him alive. But certainly over time, Yehuda himself does not believe that he did the best he could. But his assessment at the time was, that's what I can do. I can get rid of him. But later, I think he struggled with, could I have gotten them to let me save him altogether? So there are three in the story, Yosef, Reuven, and Yehuda. So how am I certain that it's Yosef and Yehuda who are the stars from now? Not the stars like the dream, but the main characters from now on. Well, one thing is we know what comes in the rest of Tanakh, but there also is a very clear literary hint. Up until now, the stories have centered around Yosef. The next perek, Lamed Chet, starts with this pasuk, Vayered Yehuda me'et Echav. Yehuda went down from his brothers, and he left home, but he really went down morally. And this perek Lamed Chet is going to be about Yehuda, the story of Yehuda and Tamar. So one hint is that Yehuda now gets his own perek, which Reuven never will do. But the real kicker is that the very next perek, which is back to Yosef in Egypt, begins with V'Yosef hurad Mitzrayma, and Yosef was taken down to Egypt. Vayered Yehuda. Yehuda left the family willingly. V'Yosef hurad. And Yosef was taken down by force. And we didn't need it to tell us in Lamed Ted Aleph, Yosef hurad Mitzrayim. We already heard that at the end of Lamed Zion. We know he's in Egypt. So you could say, well, after Lamed Chet, it's to get back to the main subject, which is true. But to me, the parallelism is intentional. These are the two brothers who are in a different category than all the others. These are the two brothers who have left the family. These are the two brothers who are immersed in a culture that is not the culture of the Avot. These are the two brothers who are going to have a different level of sophistication. They're also at a different level of risk as they enter impure and corrupt worlds. And that's really highlighted by the fact that each faces the temptation of an improper relationship with a woman. And Yehuda, Vayered, he sins with Tamar. Later, he recoups rather magnificently, but still, he commits the sin. And Yosef, who was taken down by force, who didn't want to leave, struggles, but he resists Eshet Potiphar. It's a great struggle. Vayima'ain, he refused her, has a shalshelet, such a rare note. Vayima'ain, you hear him. He struggled and struggled to resist her. Yehuda didn't resist, right? Yehuda has the gift of a leader to read people. He understands reality, and gifted leaders also often compromise with reality, right? And he did. So now we come to Dotan Redux. I say that because once again, we're going to see Yosef, Reuven, and Yehuda, and it's going to be even more sharply visible that although Reuven is a good man, he's out of the leadership. So this is after the brothers went down once and Yosef recognized them and he sets up the terrible test and he holds back Shimon in jail. And he says, if you want to get your brother Shimon out, if you want to buy food here again, you will have to bring your younger brother Binyamin. And how this strange guy who doesn't know them thought about the only test on the planet that they could never pass is beyond them. They're increasingly feeling that in some way, although this guy is crazy, God is punishing them for what they did before. And 20 years ago. And so they come home to father, loaded up with grain, and they open the bags and there's this shocking thing. Every man's money has been returned in the bag. And they know that this has to be a setup, and their father sees it too. So they have plenty of food, but they're really scared. And Reuven pipes up. He's been thinking the whole trip, how am I going to get father to let us take Binyamin back, which is necessary for the whole family. And Reuven in the green says, Et shnei vanai tamitim lo avienu elecha. Kill my two sons if I don't bring him back to you. I'm offering you 2 for 1, Abba. I know you think you love Binyamin more than I love my sons. I know you think sons of Rachel are worth twice as much as sons of Leah. So I'm offering you 2 for 1 because I'm a responsible man and I know that the family needs food or we'll all die, including Binyamin. But the proposition is such an insult to Yaakov, not the first one Reuven's committed, implying that he's a grandfather who'd like to be cheered up by the murder of his grandsons, but also laying out starkly the truth, which is the degree to which everyone in the family knows some are loved and some are not. And of course, Yaakov doesn't accept the offer. And the timing is absurd. They have food. Yehuda knows exactly what Reuven knows. They are going to have to take Binyamin down to Egypt. Yehuda, like Reuven, is worried that father won't be sufficiently motivated to get Shimon out because he's a son of Leah. And Reuven and Yehuda are both sons of Leah, but Yehuda waits and waits and waits as the stores go down and down. In my mind, it's about as long as we have been in COVID mode. And he watches Yaakov watching the stores. And he waits for the moment that Yaakov says, Shuvu shivru lanu me'at ochel. Go back and buy us a little food. And as soon as Yehuda hears the wheedling, he knows that Yaakov is ready to come to terms with the fact that he has to send Binyamin. When he says, go back and buy a little food, he knows that the condition for buying food, a little or a lot, is Binyamin. But he tries it out. Maybe I could convince someone. And Yehuda, in the first purple paragraph, speaks like a leader and not like a very full son. He confronts Yaakov openly with what he knows Yaakov is beginning to understand. And he says, if you'll send our brother with us, notice again, achinu, we'll go down, we'll buy food, blah, blah, blah. But if you're not sending Binyamin, lo nered, we will not go. Right? There's no politeness, there's no Abba, and Yaakov blows his top. And he says, why did you have to tell him we had another brother? You at Yosef enenu, at Shimon enenu, at Binyamin tikachu? Like, you're just destroying my life, you boys. And the brothers get very offended and they defend themselves and they say, could we have known that if we mentioned we had a brother, he'd tell us to bring him? We were just answering his questions. It's not our fault. Yehuda is not interested in that interchange. He gets that just like wheedling was part of the father's process to acceptance, so is blowing his top part of the process. And that deep down, Yaakov knows what has to happen. And so now he speaks to him with real love. And this is not the favorite son. Vayomer Yehuda el Yisrael Aviv. Both Aviv and Yisrael hint at so much respect and so much love. He had to push him over the threshold to what has to be done. And he was tough about it. But now that his father's there, he's soothing him really. And he says, Shilcha hana'al iti. Send the na'al with you. Well, who's the na'al in our story? Yosef. I know that it feels to you like sending Yosef away and he didn't come back. Shilcha hana'al iti. Send this na'al with me. V'nakuma v'nelcha, and we'll go. And Abba, v'nichye v'lo namut, where the dotted line is a sign of such respect. He quotes Yaakov back to himself. When Yaakov first sent them down to Egypt, he told them, v'nichye v'lo namut. And he's saying, let us do what you said is the right thing to do, Abba. We're not on opposite sides. We want to fulfill the mission that you taught us about. And we'll live and we won't die, the whole family. And then in the third paragraph, which is his parallel to Reuven's first paragraph, Et Shnei Vanai Tamit, which was so absurd, he says, Anochi Ervenu. I'll guarantee him, or you might say, I'll stand guarantor for him. It's like the Secret Service. I'll take a bullet for him. I'll give my life for him. Miyadi tivakshenu. It's interesting. Et achai anochi mevakesh, Yosef said, right? Ask for him from my hand. And now he says, here's tivakesh again. Miyadi tivakshenu. Ask for him from my hand. And if I don't bring him back to you safe and sound, I will have sinned against you all the days. And he's sort of saying the worst thing a son could do is to sin against his father all the days. Whether it means my life, world to come, it's an expression that shows Yaakov, I'll do this job the way you would want me to. I don't begrudge you that you value Binyamin so much more than me. I don't begrudge you that it would be okay if I don't come back alive, but it would break you if Binyamin won't. I accept that that's the reality and that you're my father. And I commit myself to understanding the gravity of what it would mean to come back without him and to do absolutely everything I can. And Yaakov acquiesces, and they go, and he gives them advice to bring gifts, and Binyamin goes with him. After he gives all these long instructions, and he actually can't say Binyamin's name. And finally, and at the very end, he says, at Binyamin, okay, and take Binyamin. You see how wrenching it is for him. Now I'm forgetting the pasuk. V'ka'asher shacholti shachalti. And if I'm bereaved, I'm bereaved. It's like he was mad at the brothers. And now that he's sending Binyamin and giving him into the hand of the son who says, Bimloa, Havioti v'lecha v'tzaktiv lefanecha v'chatati lecha kol hayamim. Yaakov sort of says, it doesn't say to Yehuda, but to me it feels like these words are to Yehuda. You do your best, but if it happens, it happens. Right? Don't, I won't hold it again. I trust you that you're going to give it your all. And now, comes the great moment where Reuven isn't in the picture anymore, the moment we all know about, where it's just Yehuda and Yosef. After, the goblet is put in Binyamin's bag and they're all brought back, and that moment, which I told you last week, I adore, where the brothers don't even discuss it. Every brother picks up his pack, puts it on his donkey, and without a word of discussion goes back to Egypt with Binyamin. So obviously Yehuda's going to speak because he's the guarantor, but also from now on in history, Yehuda speaks. And he has a long discussion with Yosef. And finally, Vayigash elav Yehuda. Yehuda approaches Yosef, comes close. Of course, he has to. He's about to ask the viceroy of Egypt to do something illegal, to trade prisoners in a sense. If the punishment for the theft of the goblet is Binyamin is in jail for the rest of his life, Yehuda doesn't waste words saying, you know, it's fundamentally unjust because among us, he's the only one who didn't do anything to Yosef. He just says, take me in his place. So of course he has to approach him because you can't go to a judge and say, don't put my brother, the bank robber, in jail, put me, the upstanding citizen, in his place, right? But I think Vayigash Elav Yehuda does more than that. They were both in Dotan, but not communicating. They were both involved in this issue of getting Binyamin, but Yosef was in Egypt and Yehuda was talking to his father in Canaan. They've been operating on parallel tracks, and now they're intersecting in a really profound way. And are you seeing this?
Yes.
So this is the picture, that I always put on the board when we do the passage we're about to do in my classes. And I have no idea what this is, if I got it from a calendar or what, who the artist is. I don't even know if they're men or women, but I see it as two people really on fire. Each one has like a burning idea in his mind and has been holding that idea in a lonely place. And now suddenly each is going to spill, and it's about as dramatic a denouement as you could possibly have. So let me take you back to the text, with which I know you're all very familiar, but still it's nice to see it. So Yehuda always gets purple with me because that's the royal color. So here we have it. Vayigash elav Yehuda, vayomer avdecha avi eleinu. So he's reporting what Yaakov said to them. So some of you know there's a whole discussion. Why does he say avdecha avi? Let's just assume it's courtesy. So he says, my father said to us, Atem yedatem, you boys know, Kishnayim yaldali ishti, that my wife gave birth to two with me. Imagine a father saying that, ignoring his other three wives and his 10 other sons who are present. We were shocked when we heard him say it. It obviously stayed in Yehuda's mind, and he seems to repeat it without reproach. Atem yedatem ki shnayim yalda ishti, vayitzei ha'echad me'iti va'omar ach tarof toraf velo re'iti vadhena. And one went away from me. He can't bring himself to say, one I sent. And I say to myself, he is surely torn to bits. I said, he's surely torn to bits. Of course, that's when he saw the bloody coat. And I haven't seen him since. So imagine Yosef hearing his father just a few weeks ago talking about him in this way to his brothers. And if you also take Binyamin from me, you'll bring down my old head with grief to the grave. And then is the highlighted ve'ata, with ayin, of course, which means now. Now is his proposal. There's been a long introduction. Yeshevna avdecha tachat hana'ar. Again, he's calling Binyamin and Na'ar, emphasizing his fragility, emphasizing that he protects him. and hinting that he's in the place of Yosef. But you should know that the Nar Binyamin is the father of 10 children. Binyamin is an extremely interesting character who never says one word. And if in a later session we have time, maybe we can come back to him. And now permit me to stay as a slave in place of the Na'ar. The Na'ar should return home with his brothers, as Yosef should have returned home with his brothers, right? How can I go up to my father? Vanar enenu iti. If the Na'ar isn't with me, pen erev vara shel himtza et avi. Chas v'shalom, that I should ever see the evil that will befall my father if I come back without the Na'ar. And he knows exactly what it would look like. Pen ereh, see it, right? He doesn't say it shouldn't happen. I couldn't bear seeing it because he's seen it once already when they came back without Yosef. Of course, this is when Yosef loses it. He clears the room. In this moment, he knows that Yehuda's the speaker, but he represents the group. And these are not the brothers who threw him in the pit and were going to sell him into slavery. He's never fully understood the dynamic. In this time of the test where he accuses them of being spies, in some sense, he's spying on them. And he's heard that Reuben actually stepped up in his defense, which he never knew. He thought everyone's against him. He learned that his father grieved him, which he wasn't sure about because his father had just scolded him before he sent him to Shem. He learned that all the brothers feel guilty. He learned that the brothers still consider themselves to be 12 sons of Yaakov, even though he's been away for 20 years. And now he really sees that they are new men. And he's also a new man, right? And he clears the room and he wails and he reveals his identity. And you see how many times the word ach is here. Vayomer Yosef elechav. And he said to his brothers, Ani Yosef ha'od avichai. An irrational question, of course. Yehuda just told him, I need to take Binyamin back so father won't die. So obviously Yosef is asking something else, something along the lines of, is he still my father after all these years? Is there still a bond between us? Is he still okay? Have I killed him with this crazy test? And wherever I indent, it's the brother's reaction. V'lo yachlu echav lanoto oto ki nivhalu mipanav. Of course, they were terrified when he says he's Yosef. They have this shock of clarity and say, of course it seemed to us that this guy was toying with us and plotting against us. Up till now, he's been the cat playing with the mouse. Now he's really going to get his revenge. Vayomer Yosef elechav. Yosef feels he's talking to his brothers, not the criminals who harmed him. And he says, Geshuna heina, come close to me. I imagine that they've been pulling back in their behala, in their terror. He says, come on, come close. Right? Be like Yehuda, come up and let's communicate. Vayigashu, they come close, they don't have much choice, but they don't say a word. And he realizes he's thinking of them as his brothers, but maybe he's not getting through. And he says, Vayomer ani Yosef achichem. I'm Yosef, your brother. There's an element of just convincing that it's true, because maybe they sold him to Egypt and some Egyptian, heard the facts of his life. And he says, Asher machartem oti Mitzrayim, who sold me into Egypt. Like, let's put it out on the table. Of course, there's a whole discussion. Did they sell him? Didn't they sell him? But he certainly thought they sold him. And now comes his ve'ata, his and now, his proposal for how to handle the future, right? If we back up, Yehuda's proposal was, let me stay instead of him and let's call it even. And obviously Yosef's not accepting that. And he says, so that now for both sides, it's not implicit and hinted at and whispered about, it's said out loud. Everything that's going on now has to do with what we did to Yosef. Ve'ata, and now Yosef says, Al te'atzvu va'al yichar beinechem. Don't be upset, don't be angry with yourself, don't be racked with guilt, ki machartem oti hena, that you sold me to this place. Ki lemichyah shlachani Elokim lifnechem. Hashem sent me ahead of you to save lives. I'm going to save lives in Egypt. I'm going to save your lives. In a sense, gamzu l'tova. Of course, the perpetrator can't say gamzu l'tova, but the victim can. Ve'ata lo atem shlachtem oti henakim elokim. This was Hashem's plan. He's come to understand that, and he's comforting them with what he's comforted himself. That it's not that his life was so unfair. It was a plan. They don't react to that, to his forgiveness. Or really, it's more than, he says there's nothing to forgive. It was God's plan. And he cries on Binyamin, and Binyamin cries on him. And then finally, Vayinashek l'chol echad. He kisses each brother and cries on them. Va'achareichem dibru echav ito. And then his brothers were able to speak to him. No words worked, but his tears did. And so now you can come back and see how Yosef sought his brothers, and Yehuda always considered Yosef one of them. And you can see that Yehuda did everything for the father who didn't express love. Yehuda was, one of the guys, but he was never his father's special son. But he couldn't bear pene revara shel yimtza et avi. And Yosef is worried about his father, loves his father, says, Ha'od avichai, but is prepared to withdraw a little from the father so that the others can come close. He has a new understanding of how much he made his brothers suffered being jealous of him. He was very involved with his own suffering. And now all the leaders will come from Yosef and Yehuda. I'm just to name a few, the two good spies, Caleb from Yehuda, Yoshua from Ephraim, which is Yosef. The beautiful Haftorah of Parshat Vayigash, when Yechezkel says God tells him take two trees or branches, write one on Yosef and one on Yehuda and put them in water and they'll grow together to a single tree. Such a magnificent image. And of course, the notion, we all have heard of Mashiach ben David, David being from Yehuda, but there's also an idea of a Mashiach ben Yosef, who will play some part in the end of days. And I would say that Yosef is someone who starts out understanding achva, brotherly love, and grows into understanding love for the father. And did I say Yosef or Yehuda? That was Yehuda. Yehuda has achva and only later the avi element. And Yosef has his Abba, he wants achva, he doesn't have it. He loses both, And then in the end, although he loves his father, he chooses achva over avi. And I think you can extend the Yosef Yehuda situation to a model of Jewish leadership. Last week, we ended up extrapolating from Yosef to Jewish leadership. So now we have the two of them, and we can say a little more about it. So a leader should be motivated by achva, brotherly and sisterly love, or what I would say, love for the people. A leader should also have a higher motivation of love for the Father, which on a national level means Ahavat Hashem and Yirat Shamayim. A leader should be prepared to sacrifice both from mitoch achva umitoch ahavat Hashem. And a brother should be prepared to share the leadership. Sometimes one on top, sometimes the other, some the two working together. Halavai, we should have leaders like that. I'd love to hear from you if you want to unmute yourselves. Oh, and next week, we're going to talk about how the second dream was fulfilled, which I just ran by you this week, and about Yosef's tear, a few other things related to Yosef or Yosef and Yehuda. And then from there on, we're going to start comparing Yosef to other biblical narratives. Oh. So who wants to share? Paul looks ready to speak up.
No.
Yeah.
No, sorry.
No, none of that. Just saying it's thank you is what I have to say.
Oh, well, glad to be here. Nobody wants to say anything? I feel lonely being the only talker.
It's Jeff. I sent you a chat message. At some point where Yehuda is pleading with his father to be able to send Benjamin with him, Torah uses the name Yisrael rather than Yaakov, and I wonder why the switch there.
So, the kids always ask me why on all the cases, and 1,000 times I've said, well, you take the concordance, make the list of every time and figure it out. Of course, there's no consistent thing. But to me, in that moment, it's like understanding the weight of the moment, the significance of the moment. Mm-hmm. And also, he just was a little disrespectful, right? If you send him, I'll go. If you don't, I won't. And then he's repairing that a little and saying, in other words, I think El Yisrael Aviv, that phrase is really there to describe Yosef's mindset. And he's now seen the flaws in his father and the pettiness and the unfairness, but he also is Yisrael, and he is the great man, and that's how it feels to me. But I don't know any system that always, and it's somehow a general rule when it's more momentous, he's called Yisrael, but there are plenty of exceptions.
Rachel?
Yeah.
It's Nomi. So Yisrael, he gets the name Yisrael when he fights with the angel. And I think there are Mefarshim that say he's really fighting with himself. So here again, he has to fight with himself to let Binyamin go, in order to save the whole family.
Right.
The inner struggle.
Right. It's about Yehuda's watching his father struggle, and the narrator is telling us he's struggling. I mean, it's also a little bit of foreshadowing, right? He was told part of being along with the name Yisrael, not when it's foretold by the angel, but when Hashem actually gives it to him, he he tells him that he's going to have a group of nations. So he can't lose one of his kahal. So Binyamin has to come back for, the bracha to come true in a sense. The bracha that goes with the name Yisrael.
Hmm.
Yosef's great, isn't he? You all agree with me on that?
Very much so.
But in that sense, then
Yeah.
Yosef also has to come back.
Well, it's going to work the other way, right?
Well, but I mean, no, but I mean, in the
They're gonna
sense
go
of,
to Yosef. What?
no, the point being that Yosef has to live.
Yes.
Yosef
Oh,
can't.
right.
Right,
Yosef
right.
has to be alive someplace.
Come
Right,
back from the pit.
Right. Some little corner of Yaakov's mind. I don't know if he's still hoping, but he knows there was no corpse, right? He says, Lo ve'iti vadhena, right? Tarof toraf, but he never uses the word mate, right? I mean, you can imagine the anguish seesaw, like of a parent who has an MIA child, one day you think he's gone, one day you hope he isn't. But he has no idea to connect him with Egypt. The brothers do. Just going to Egypt puts Yosef in their mind, which is probably why the first time the father had to push them, said, Lama titra'u, why are you sitting there looking at each other? Right? Go buy some food. And they're thinking, Egypt, oy vey, Egypt. Okay. Good night, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
Rachel,
you.
as always.
Right, thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Look forward to
Margie.
seeing everybody.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Hi,
Good night. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.